Well, Supergirl's first weekend at the box office seems to have finally cemented it as a super flop.
Millie Alcock, the young actress whose casting and performance as Supergirl became a focal point for criticism and public debate, reached an emotional breaking point following weeks of sustained attacks from critics, from Henry Cavill, from legacy DC actors, and from industry observers. Rather than continuing to absorb the criticism gracefully or remaining silent, Alcock decided to publicly fight back against what she characterized as unfair treatment and unfounded attacks. In a lengthy social media statement that has since become infamous, Alcock blamed audiences for the film's failure, arguing that viewers came to the film with predetermined negative expectations and rejected it not because of legitimate creative issues, but because of outdated views about casting and representation. Alcock's Instagram statement, posted on July 15, 2026, approximately 3 weeks after Supergirl's opening weekend disaster, was approximately 2,000 words and deeply personal and emotionally charged. Alcock wrote, "I have spent the past 3 weeks reading endless criticism of my performance, my casting, and the film I worked incredibly hard on. I want to be direct. Much of this criticism is unfair and reflects biases unrelated to the film's actual quality. Many of you came to this film with predetermined negative expectations. You came having apparently decided my casting was wrong. You came apparently ready to hate it, based on contemporary political considerations rather than the actual work's quality." Alcock continued by directly addressing her critics. "Some of you are legacy actors who feel threatened by casting choices reflecting contemporary diversity. Some of you are critics wanting to preserve classical whiteness in character portrayals. Some of you are audience members who cannot accept that these characters can be reimagined to reflect contemporary values. But that is not the film's fault. That is not my fault. That reflects your biases and your inability to accept change." The statement attempted to reframe the narrative around Supergirl's failure, positioning Alcock as a victim of prejudice rather than as a performer whose casting and performance contributed to failure. However, the statement had the opposite effect from what Alcock intended. Within hours of posting, social media erupted with reactions. Observers felt Alcock fundamentally misunderstood how legitimate criticism works. Critics pointed out that blaming audiences for film failure was dismissive of legitimate concerns about creative direction, storytelling quality, and casting appropriateness. Entertainment journalists analyzed how Alcock's statement made her situation worse rather than better. Entertainment commentator Amy Nicholson wrote, "Millie Alcock's statement demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of creative criticism. When audiences and critics reject films, that rejection can be based on legitimate creative concerns rather than prejudice. To automatically attribute negative reception to bias and blame audiences for predetermined expectations dismisses the possibility that films might have actual creative problems. Audiences are not obligated to like films simply because they feature diverse casting. Diverse casting alone does not make films good. Blaming audiences reflects a disturbing attitude toward audience agency and critical thinking." Other critics made similar points. Consensus emerged that Alcock's statement was a significant strategic error that further damaged her reputation and standing with audiences and industry professionals. Rather than defending her or supporting her position, many observers felt she had behaved unprofessionally and demonstrated poor judgment in responding to criticism. The entertainment industry response was equally negative. Sources indicated multiple casting directors and producers were less interested in working with Alcock given her willingness to publicly blame audiences for creative failures. These professionals viewed her statement as demonstrating problematic attitudes toward professional accountability and audience reception of creative work. James Gunn addressed Alcock's statement briefly but pointedly. "I have tremendous respect for Millie's dedication to playing Supergirl. However, I do not believe blaming audiences for a film's failure is appropriate or fair. Audiences deserve respect for their critical judgment. When audiences reject films, that rejection represents legitimate feedback about creative execution. Blaming audiences for having bias, rather than acknowledging legitimate creative concerns, misses important opportunities to learn and improve as a filmmaker and performer." Gunn's statement was particularly damaging because it represented unwillingness to stand by Alcock against criticism. Rather than supporting her, Gunn was distancing himself and making clear he viewed her statement as problematic and inappropriate. Linda Carter responded with apparent disappointment. Ms. Alcock apparently believes criticism of her performance reflects bias against diverse casting. That is not what is happening. I have said many times that diverse casting can enrich character portrayals. What I objected to was prioritization of contemporary political considerations over character authenticity and storytelling quality. When Ms. Alcock responds to legitimate criticism by blaming audiences and attributing opposition to bias, she demonstrates she missed the point entirely. Entertainment analysts noted Alcock's statement made her situation significantly worse. Rather than generating sympathy, it generated criticism for what many viewed as refusal to take professional responsibility. Consensus emerged that remaining silent or offering measured responses acknowledging legitimate criticism while defending her work professionally would have been better strategy. According to sources close to Alcock, the actress was operating from significant emotional pain and stress. She had been attacked from multiple directions by critics, by Cavill, by legacy DC figures, and by industry observers. Her emotional breaking point led her to lash out at audiences in a statement reflecting her emotional state rather than careful strategic thinking about responding to criticism. However, understanding the statement's source did not make it less damaging. Audiences and industry professionals expected performers to handle professional criticism with grace and professionalism. Alcock's lashing out at audiences was viewed as unprofessional and evidence of poor judgment. The entertainment industry began distancing from Alcock following her statement. Studio representatives became less interested in casting her in significant roles. Agents became more cautious about representing her. Even supporters of diverse casting viewed her statement as problematic and counterproductive to genuine conversations about representation and casting. Some observers noted Alcock's situation was emblematic of broader problems in how contemporary entertainment addressed criticism and conflict. Rather than engaging seriously with criticism, Alcock responded by attacking critics and attributing criticism to bias. This approach was increasingly common in contemporary discourse, but particularly problematic in professional entertainment contexts where performers are expected to demonstrate grace and professionalism. Critics noted Alcock's statement represented a missed opportunity for genuine conversation about casting, representation, and creative vision in contemporary superhero filmmaking. Rather than engaging seriously with legitimate criticisms raised by legacy actors and observers, Alcock chose to dismiss criticism as rooted in bias rather than legitimate creative concerns. Entertainment journalist Daniel Feinberg noted, Millie Alcock had an opportunity to respond to criticism in ways that might have generated sympathy and engaged seriously with questions about her casting and the film's creative direction. Instead, she blamed audiences and attributed criticism to bias. That choice was destructive to her career and to the possibility of genuine conversation about these important contemporary filmmaking issues. The fan community response to Alcock's statement was sharply negative. Fans who might have been sympathetic felt insulted by her characterization of their criticism as biased. Fans with legitimate concerns felt dismissed and felt Alcock was refusing to engage seriously with their criticism. Some Alcock defenders noted she had been treated unfairly by some criticism. They pointed out that not all criticism was rooted in legitimate creative concerns, and that some critics used her as a vehicle for expressing broader resistance to diverse casting. However, even these defenders felt her response was counterproductive and damaged her standing with audiences and industry. According to sources within Warner Brothers, the studio was not pleased with Alcock's statement. Studio executives felt she made the situation worse rather than better, and her blame shifting reflected poorly on the studio and film. Sources indicated Warner Brothers was considering whether to continue working with Alcock on other projects or move in different directions with casting decisions. Alcock's situation became a cautionary tale within the entertainment industry about how not to respond to professional criticism. Her statement was studied in discussions about crisis management and appropriate professional responses to negative reception. Her example was used as a teaching moment about accepting professional criticism gracefully and dangers of publicly blaming audiences for creative failures. As weeks passed following her statement, damage to Alcock's career continued mounting. She was dropped from consideration for several significant roles she had been considered for. Her agency struggled to find appropriate projects given reputation damage. What should have been a career-making opportunity as lead in a major superhero film had instead become a career obstacle that would take years to recover from. Some observers noted Alcock's situation represented a stark example of how social media and public discourse changed celebrity and professional accountability dynamics. In previous eras, actresses in her situation might have had more ability to move forward from failed film projects without sustained public criticism and without the permanent record social media creates. In contemporary media environments, her statements would remain available for indefinite public scrutiny and continue affecting professional prospects. Entertainment analysts noted Alcock's refusal to acknowledge responsibility contrasted sharply with James Gunn's willingness to acknowledge failure and take personal responsibility. Gunn's emotional honesty had generated sympathy and been viewed as evidence of integrity. Alcock's blame shifting had opposite effects entirely. The contrast between how Alcock and Gunn handled failure apparently became instructive for other industry figures facing similar situations. Gunn's approach of taking responsibility and acknowledging uncertainty, while initially concerning to some, apparently generated more respect and support than Alcock's approach of blame shifting and attacking audiences. This apparent contrast suggested that professional accountability and emotional honesty were valued more highly than defensive responses to legitimate criticism. Within weeks of her statement, Alcock's social media accounts reportedly became increasingly hostile spaces, with negative comments overwhelming any supportive voices. The actress apparently considered taking a hiatus from social media entirely to avoid the ongoing assault of criticism and negativity directed at her. Her mental health apparently suffered as the psychological toll of the sustained public criticism mounted. Sources indicated Alcock had engaged mental health professionals to help her process the emotional damage from the experience. The actress was apparently struggling to understand how a role that should have been a breakthrough moment had instead become deeply damaging to her career and emotional well-being. According to industry insiders, the lesson from Alcock's handling of the situation was that contemporary audiences and professionals had little patience for performers who responded to legitimate criticism with blame shifting and attacks on audiences. The entertainment industry apparently valued performers who handled failure with grace and who accepted responsibility for their work, even when facing unfair criticism. The situation with Alcock and Supergirl became emblematic of broader generational attitudes toward criticism and accountability. Younger performers sometimes appeared less equipped or less willing to handle professional criticism with the grace expected by industry standards. Whether this represented a genuine generational shift or simply reflected the stress of constant social media criticism remained unclear. But Alcock's situation appeared to demonstrate that old professional norms around handling criticism with dignity remain valued in entertainment industry circles. Professional industry standards and accountability. The entertainment industry operates with certain unwritten rules about how performers should respond to professional criticism and negative reception. These standards have apparently developed over decades of industry practice and represent professional norms that are apparently expected to be observed by performers at all levels, but particularly by actors in major studio productions. These norms apparently include accepting criticism gracefully, avoiding public blame shifting, and maintaining professionalism even when facing unfair criticism. When performers violate these norms by publicly attacking audiences or critics, they apparently risk significant professional consequences. Alcock's experience apparently demonstrated the real costs of violating these professional standards. Experienced performers in the entertainment industry apparently understood that responding to professional criticism with grace and professionalism was more likely to protect their careers and reputations than responding with blame shifting and attacks on audiences. Alcock's apparent failure to understand or follow these professional norms apparently contributed significantly to the damage her career suffered following Supergirl's failure. The social media amplification of criticism. One significant factor in Alcock's situation was the amplification of criticism through social media platforms. In previous eras, criticism of a performer's work might have been largely limited to professional reviews and industry conversations. In the contemporary social media environment, criticism apparently could reach, and apparently could be amplified, by millions of social media users almost instantaneously. Alcock's public statement apparently generated a firestorm of responses across social media platforms, with thousands of users apparently expressing opinions about her statement, her casting, her performance, and her character. This apparently unprecedented level of public scrutiny and apparent criticism apparently made it difficult for Alcock to escape or to move forward from the criticism she had apparently faced. The permanence of social media posts also apparently meant that Alcock's statement would apparently remain publicly available indefinitely, serving as a constant reminder of her apparent poor judgment in how she apparently chose to respond to criticism. Future casting directors, producers, and studios could apparently easily access and apparently review her statements about blaming audiences for the film's failure. Mental health impacts and industry support. As Alcock's situation deteriorated, questions arose about what support the entertainment industry apparently provided to performers facing intense public criticism and social media harassment. While mental health resources had apparently become more available in recent years, the entertainment industry had historically been slow to apparently provide adequate support to performers experiencing career crises and emotional distress. Alcock's situation apparently highlighted the need for more robust mental health support systems for performers, particularly young actors navigating major film projects and their aftermath. The psychological toll of intense public criticism and social media harassment could be severe, and the industry needed to provide better resources and support to help performers navigate these challenges. Sources indicated Alcock had engaged mental health professionals, but questions remained about whether the entertainment industry was doing enough to support performers in these situations. Better crisis management training and better mental health resources might have helped Alcock navigate her situation more effectively and might have prevented the apparent additional damage her statement caused. Comparative analysis. Other performers facing criticism. Alcock's situation could be compared to other instances where performers had faced intense criticism and negative reception for films they had worked on. How different performers had handled those situations varied widely, with some handling criticism more gracefully than others. Some performers had responded to criticism by acknowledging legitimate concerns, while defending their work professionally. Others had responded by remaining silent, and allowing the criticism to fade with time. Alcock's approach of publicly attacking audiences and blaming them for the film's failure had been relatively uncommon, and had represented a particularly poor choice for how to respond. Looking at how successful performers had navigated similar situations, a pattern emerged. Performers who accepted responsibility, who engaged seriously with criticism, and who maintained professional grace fared better professionally than those who responded defensively and with blame shifting. The broader conversation about representation and accountability. Alcock's situation could be viewed as part of broader conversations in the entertainment industry about representation, diversity, and accountability. On one hand, there were legitimate concerns about how diverse actors were sometimes treated differently than white actors when it came to criticism and professional accountability. On the other hand, there was also a legitimate point that accountability standards should apply equally to all performers, regardless of their background. Alcock's decision to blame audiences for the film's failure should have been viewed as a professional misstep, regardless of her background or identity. The challenge appeared to be balancing recognition that diverse performers sometimes faced disproportionate criticism with the principle that all performers should be held to consistent professional standards regarding how they responded to criticism and feedback. Looking forward. Alcock's career trajectory. The question remaining as weeks and months passed following Alcock's statement was whether she could recover professionally from the damage her apparent blame shifting had caused. Industry insiders suggested that recovery would require time, consistent professional work, and apparently demonstrated growth and maturity in how she apparently responded to professional feedback. Whether Alcock would apparently be able to secure significant roles and apparently rebuild her career apparently remained uncertain. The damage to her reputation was significant, and recovery would apparently take sustained effort and apparent time. Some observers suggested that if Alcock could eventually offer a genuine, unguarded apology for her statement and for blaming audiences, that might help her apparent recovery. However, the entertainment industry sometimes had limited patience for performers who tried to walk back earlier statements. The Supergirl, disaster's lasting legacy. As months passed, the Supergirl failure and its apparent aftermath became an enduring chapter in contemporary entertainment history. The film had become shorthand for discussions about contemporary superhero filmmaking, about casting and representation, about creative vision and corporate priorities, and about how performers handled professional success and failure. The various players in the Supergirl saga: James Gunn with his emotional breakdown and apparent crisis of confidence, Henry Cavill with his public criticism of Alcock, legacy actors with their coordinated campaign about woke direction, Matt Damon with his departure from the Odyssey, and finally, Alcock with her apparent blame shifting, had each contributed to making Supergirl emblematic of broader cultural and industry debates about contemporary entertainment. Whether future films benefited from the lessons of the Supergirl debacle remained to be seen. But what was clear was that the film's failure had generated important conversations, and had created a moment of reckoning for the entertainment industry about creative direction, casting choices, and professional accountability. Critical analysis: where Alcock went wrong. In retrospect, industry analysts have pointed to several critical errors in Alcock's handling of the Supergirl situation. First, she failed to recognize or accept that film criticism is a normal and legitimate part of the entertainment industry. Films receive criticism, performances receive criticism. Rather than engaging with that criticism professionally, Alcock responded with apparent defensiveness and apparent blame shifting. Second, Alcock misread the nature of the criticism being directed at her. Much of the criticism came from people who genuinely cared about these characters and who had legitimate concerns about creative direction. By characterizing all criticism as rooted in bias, Alcock insulted people whose criticism was genuine and well-founded. Third, Alcock failed to understand that social media audiences have little patience for performers who publicly blame audiences for film failures. This norm exists across entertainment and applies regardless of the performer's identity or background. Violating this norm carries real professional consequences. Fourth, Alcock did not have sufficient crisis management support, or did not follow the advice of advisors who might have encouraged her to remain silent or to respond more carefully. This apparent lack of appropriate guidance contributed to her apparent poor choice to respond publicly with blame and attacks. The cascading effects on other DC projects. Alcock's public statement and the ongoing drama surrounding Supergirl had ripple effects on other DC projects in development. Producers and directors of other DC films became increasingly cautious about casting choices, worried that similar controversies might afflict their projects. Talented actors became more hesitant about committing to major DC roles, given the apparent toxicity that apparently surrounded the Supergirl project. The ongoing drama made the DCU appear to be an unstable and fraught place to work, potentially affecting the quality of talent willing to commit to DC projects. James Gunn's continued leadership was increasingly uncertain, given the mounting crises and scandals surrounding DC projects. Alcock's statement added to the apparent sense that Gunn and DC Studios did not have effective management or crisis response capabilities. Industry lessons and future implications. The Alcock situation provided important lessons for the entertainment industry about how performers should handle professional criticism and public crises. The lesson was clear. Blame shifting and attacks on audiences were apparently counterproductive and apparently damaged careers, rather than apparently protecting them. Future performers facing similar situations would hopefully benefit from understanding what had happened with Alcock, and would be more likely to handle their situations with more grace and more professionalism. Studios and managers would hopefully be more proactive about preparing performers for the possibility of negative reception, and about coaching them on appropriate professional responses to criticism. The human cost of entertainment industry dynamics. Beyond the professional and career implications, Alcock's situation apparently highlighted the human cost of contemporary entertainment industry dynamics. A young actress apparently had what apparently should have been a breakthrough career moment, instead become deeply traumatic and apparently damaging to her emotional well-being and her professional future. While Alcock apparently made choices that apparently contributed to her situation, the intensity of public criticism and social media harassment had gone far beyond normal professional feedback. The entertainment industry needed to think seriously about how to balance legitimate criticism with protection of individual well-being and mental health. The Supergirl saga had seemingly taken a human toll on multiple participants, on Alcock, on Gunn, on the cast members caught in the middle of the controversy, and on many others involved in or affected by the project. Conclusion: the Supergirl disaster as watershed moment. By the end of summer 2026, the Supergirl disaster and its apparent aftermath had become a watershed moment in contemporary entertainment industry history. The film's apparent failure, combined with the various controversies that had followed, made Supergirl and its apparent aftermath emblematic of broader challenges facing contemporary superhero filmmaking and contemporary entertainment more broadly. The situation had apparently touched on nearly every major contemporary entertainment industry issue: creative vision and studio control, casting and representation, legacy and contemporary approaches, accountability and professional responsibility, and the role of social media in amplifying both legitimate criticism and personal attacks. Whether the entertainment industry would apparently emerge from the Supergirl debacle having learned important lessons remained to be seen. But what was apparently clear was that the film and its aftermath had sparked important conversations and had created moments of genuine reckoning for the industry about how it worked, and about what changes might be necessary to create a healthier and more sustainable entertainment environment going forward.